So in closing, thank you for participating in the Bureau of Indian Affairs Midwest Region 2022 Partners in Action Annual Conference. And we hope that you gain some valuable information from being presented here today. Please welcome our speakers from the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Trust Services, Branch of Tribal Climate Resilience. It's Alexis. Oh, I believe the first speaker will be Coral Avery, the Natural Resource Specialist, and then there'll be Alexis Wagner, our Environmental Protection Specialist. That's my spiel. We can continue on from there.
Sure. Oh, go ahead,
I'm
Coral.
still muted. Sorry about that. Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here and listening in to learn more about our branch. We'll do quick introductions before moving on. So my name is Coral Avery. I'm a natural resource specialist for the BIA's Tribal Climate Resilience Program. I'm also a youth and climate liaison at the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. And I'm a Shawnee tribal citizen. I use they, them pronouns, and I've been in this position for about the past year and a half. So it's great to present here at the Partners in Action Conference. And I'll pass it over to Alexis.
Thank you, Coral. I'm Alexis Wagner. I'm the Environmental Protection Specialist with the BIA Branch of Tribal Climate Resilience. I'm under the central office, but a lot of my assistance is to the Alaska region. I'm from the Metlakatla Indian community in Southeast Alaska, but currently based out of Denver, Colorado. And my background is really in infrastructure planning and management. And so I focused a lot on relocation issues surrounding climate change, and really happy to be presenting here. And thank you again for the invite, and I'll pass it back to Coral.
Great. And we can move on to the next slide.
There might be some lag.
That's okay. Well, I can get us started. I believe this next slide, we're going to be discussing the topics of our presentation today, beginning with our organizational structure, program purpose, technical assistance, including training, our liaisons program, and regional bureau support. And then we'll be discussing youth and the next generation and the ways that our program supports tribal youth programs. There we go. Thanks, Alexis. And that includes our BIA Pathways program, NICALC, or the Native Youth Climate Adaptation and Leadership Congress. And then we'll move on to finish with our annual awards program, including some case studies from this region. And Alexis, can we move to the next slide? Perfect. So just for some background, our organizational structure, our program in tribal climate resilience, we are a part of Trust Services. So it starts at the top, Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, onto the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and our branch is located under Trust Services. And then moving on to the purpose of our branch. So Tribal Climate Resilience has just recently become a branch rather than a program. We provide resources for federally recognized tribal nations, particularly in supporting and building tribal capacity for climate resilience. And this is through both technical and financial assistance. So some of our financial assistance includes our annual awards program, which we will be discussing later. And technical assistance includes connecting tribes to available data and support tools, providing access to trainings and workshops, as well as facilitating planning associated with climate change related impacts. And we have additional resources available at all times on the TCR website. And with that, I'll pass it over to Alexis to discuss our annual awards program.
Thank you, Coral. So you heard a little bit about purpose, and as part of our branch, one of the main focuses is this annual awards program, and it supports tribal nations, tribal consortia, and tribal organizations to build climate resilience through our competitive awards. And these awards support training access, capacity building, assessments, and planning, as you can see on this list. And we've been able to fund over 250 tribal adaptation plans, vulnerability assessments, and risk assessments. And so we've had a really far reach since our inception in 2015, I believe. And so even though we're a fairly new branch, we've really been able to put out a lot of awards, and it's been great seeing what some of the outcomes of these projects are. And with this, since 2011, apologies, I forgot we rebranded a couple times, but our branch has distributed over 700 awards. As I've mentioned, we've had a really far reach, and these awards have totaled more than $74 million. And our budget, it varies from $8 million to $15 million annually. And with the bipartisan infrastructure law or bill this year, we've had an increase in our budget, and so it's been slightly bigger than that 15 million. And our solicitation has recently closed, and those awards should be coming out soon. We're currently reviewing our proposals in our first phase. And if you're interested in learning more about our program, the annual awards program, we do have our solicitation and our FAQ webinars on our website. We also have past some award summaries listed there as well. And so for this year, as I mentioned, with the bill funding, we did receive more money for our annual awards program. And with that, we were able to fund more categories. And so our categories typically fall under three groups. So adaptation planning, internships and youth engagement, and our ocean and coastal management planning. But with that bill funding, we've been able to fund three new categories for relocation, manage, treat, or protect in place activities. Category 7 is planning, and category 11 is more implementation, and category 12 is to fund a local coordinator within the tribe that works on these types of activities. And this is really the first year that we've been able to fund implementation activities. Typically, we've only been able to fund planning activities and trainings. And so that's a really exciting addition to our annual awards program. And these implementation funds aren't just for, relocation. It's also to implement climate adaptation strategies, so category 10. And we also had category 13 to help with international traditional knowledge virtual exchange. And so we do have some new additions, and it's really exciting to see. But we are also excited to continue supporting these planning activities and capacity building. It does make a huge difference, and typically we do see these tribes coming back for other grants after category 6. That category 6 is really to build that initial capacity within the tribe, and then they're able to support these other categories in the next funding round. And so if you're interested in looking at past awards and learning what we have funded in the past, along with those awards summaries on our website, we do have an annual awards map. This does include the past awards and funding totals by tribe. And so if you're interested in a specific tribe, for example, in the Midwest region, you're able to type that into this map and it will show you the past awards, along with other past project information and useful links that might be related to the awards program. And also on our website is another great resource. For the National Climate Assessment, we do have an interactive web map, and this displays the locations of these resilience actions by community. And you're able to search by the NCA region or by activity type. And so if you're interested in a tribe's monitoring project, then you can search by that. Or if you just want to see in your region what planning activities are happening, you're able to search by that as well. And just to kind of see the distribution of where our awards are for 2019 and 2020, we have some graphs right here. And you can see the varied budget that I kind of mentioned earlier. And just wanted to note that, we do have some regions that we see a lot of awards from, but in 2020, when we had that boost in budget, we did see more awards from, typically underrepresented regions. For example, we saw more adaptation planning awards for the Midwest region. And so that the budget does typically, as you can see, impact how many awards we're able to give out. Of course, more money, more awards, but it's always good to see the representation because, as you can see, some of the regions we don't really get any awards put out, or we just don't see many, and that could be from not receiving the applications or just not receiving enough. And so also connecting funding to needs. And so we do want to mention that climate change isn't isolated. And so it's important for these communities to look at grants that aren't specific to climate change and don't have climate change in the title. There's many ways to leverage the funding that is available. Climate change isn't specific to vulnerability assessments. It can look like emergency management or water quality issues. And so we just thought that was a really important topic to mention during this presentation, as other current funding sources could be options to even tag up with our funding and leverage it, as I mentioned. Since changes in climate, it can really directly affect many tribal resources, and there is a multitude of funding resources that can help with these. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Coral to talk about technical assistance.
Great, thank you, Alexis. So first off, with technical assistance, I'll be discussing trainings. Our TCR branch, or Tribal Climate Resilience branch, does some DOI and BIA specific trainings. However, the majority of our trainings are partners with the Northern Arizona University's Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, or ITEP. And Alexis, if we can get the next slide. I'm not sure if it's lagging or just haven't changed it yet. There we go. Thank you. And ITEP's climate change program. So since 2016, tribal climate change, we've had 40 plus, tribal climate change trainings, webinars, and conferences in partnership with ITEP. We also have the biennial National Tribal and Indigenous Climate Conference, or NTIC. I know there's also a Indigenous Transportation Conference that uses that same acronym, but this NTIC is climate focused. And this year it's happening August 29th through September 1st, both online and in St. Paul, Minnesota. Including these details today because registration is actually still open. So if anybody who is listening to this live today is interested in participating, the in-person registration closes this Friday, August 12th, and virtual registration is open until Monday, August 22nd. So we will be presenting there as well on some of our TCR-based programs. And the images on the right side here are from some of our trainings in partnership with ITEP, as well as promotional materials for NTIC this year. And Alexis, can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. So regarding our ITEP trainings, we have an introduction to climate change adaptation planning that has different regional focuses. We also host climate change webinars on various topics. So some examples of past presentations include forest carbon projects for tribes, solar power projects in Indian country, mental health, vulnerability assessments, tribal emergency management, Indigenous framework approaches, and so many more. We also work on advanced climate change cohort courses. These can also have multiple region focuses, such as our regular training and progress calls and group workshops. And then another example of that is our hazard mitigation planning and eco-cultural resources. All right. Another aspect of our technical assistance is our Tribal Resilience Liaison Network. This is a program that we fund that partners with different universities across the nation. So the three aspects that come together to create the Tribal Resilient Liaison is our BIA TCR branch and funding, as I said, specifically for these tribal liaisons. This is also a partnership with a tribal organization. So this is the tribal liaison's employer and manager. And then it's also a partnership in our BIA's unique relationship with the USGS, particularly on the climate change end, our unique partnership with USGS's Climate Adaptation Science Centers. And this offers a office location and extensive climate science resources to the liaison network. So they are hosted by the universities and funded by our program and employed by a tribal organization. So although it may seem a bit confusing, this helps us expand our capacity at TCR and really creates relationship between these different agencies, academic institutions, and tribes and tribal organizations by region. All right, and this is a list of our institutional host partners. If we can send out, I believe we'll be sending out slides later on, or sharing these along with the recording of the webinar, so you can access these, but you can also do a quick Google search for your region of interest. Just be sure to be using the BIA's map of our regions, as everybody kind of divides these regions a little bit differently. Our newest is the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, or the USGS's rather, Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, that has been around only since last year. So their website is kind of under construction, but with some more information there. And we are hoping to update our list of liaisons on the TCR's website shortly as well. All right, so Tribal Climate Resilience funds 7 of the 8 regional tribal climate resilience liaisons. They're all pictured here at the bottom of the screen, kind of separated by region. If you're able to read it, I know the text is a bit small there. The BIA partners with nonprofit tribal organizations to hire the liaison. So, for example, in the Northwest, we have the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians that partners with the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center and our branch to provide funding to, I'm forgetting her last name now. She just came on, but the second picture here, Amelia, she has been incredible so far. And some of our staff has also changed recently and are transitioning very well into their new positions. Our liaisons are located at the DOI's Climate Adaptation Science Center's host institution to link tribal needs and priorities to resources that are available at the CASC regional data hubs. And they cover all of Indian country for technical expertise. Sometimes there's also some overlap between regions, as tribal boundaries don't always fit perfectly within the ways that they've been divided by BIA or other agencies and institutions. So they oftentimes work together and work in partnership with these other groups to meet the needs of tribes. Next slide, please. So our tribal resilience liaisons serve as extension agents. They work with tribes to best access and utilize information, data, and expertise available at the Climate Adaptation Science Centers. They also facilitate research and collaboration, coordinate forums and information exchange, and they oftentimes also review our TCR funding opportunity proposals prior to tribal submission. That way they can offer feedback if a proposal has been denied and help tribes improve that for the next year. They can also work actively with the tribal applicant to work with them during the process of creating their proposal before sending it in. So that's a huge help to our branch as well as to tribes applying for our annual awards program. Next slide. Thank you. So all 12 of our BIA regions have a TCR point of contact. These folks serve as the Bureau Project Officer on awarded grants, and they plan with modest regional TCR funds for resources, gatherings, or climate-related projects. So I'm hoping that this contact is up to date, but the last we checked, the PIC for the BIA Midwest region is Matthew Anderson, with the alternate being Scott Verdon. It is perfect. Thank you for confirming that, Mary. Okay, and this is a resource specific to the Midwest. So one of the regional partners is the Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Units. So tribes can partner with the expertise at CESU universities across the nation. So TCR, our TCR branch, partners with the CESU, thus allowing tribes to access expertise out of a very low indirect cost rate compared to others. There's many participating institutions, and here for the Great Lakes and Northern Forest CESU, we have a link, as well as the University of Minnesota is a part of this program as well. Okay, and Alexis, if I'm not mistaken, I'm continuing with this section as well, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect. All right. So speaking to the next generation, TCR branch is focusing on a few youth programs, including the BIA Pathways internship program, specifically tribal resilience interns. These interns provide additional capacity to the branch, including our colleague Alexis Samoy. She was based in North Central region during her Pathways internship, where she tribal lands, tribal colleges and universities, and the Climate Adaptation Science Center Consortium Network. So she got to bring all of these things together through her project. She was also located at Central Office in New Mexico, where she assisted with various components of the annual Funding Opportunities Awards and processing those awards. So there's many other interns in many other regions, and our BIA Pathways internship at large, there's a lot more information that could be shared about it, but for the sake of time, we'll focus on this example, and Alexis and I will now share about our Pathways internship experiences as well. So I'll pass it over to Alexis.
Sure, thank you. So for my internship, I spent a year with the Tribal Climate Resilience program at the time. I was focused on the Alaska region, as can be shown on the map. And I joined during this pandemic. And so when I first started the internship, I was living in Metlakatla, Alaska, so on my reservation. And then I ended up moving to Colorado. And during this internship, I really focused on providing that assistance to the Alaska Native villages with their tribal climate resilience grants and helping them with their reporting, their budgets, and any other climate related projects. Providing that assistance to our point of contact in Alaska, as for such a big region, we currently only have one. And so my internship was really focused on providing that support to her, and also splitting my time with the Alaska CASC. I helped them develop their Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network, which is really a tool for these Alaska Native villages to receive trainings and direct assistance with their projects. And we hosted monthly webinars based on some of the feedback we received directly from them. That way we can give them the tools to complete their projects. And so my internship was really focused on those types of activities. And since it was kind of regional, there wasn't, I guess it's not as exciting as some of the other ones. Coral will go over hers on the next slide.
Great, thank you, Alexis. Okay, so during my Pathways internship, I started in the summer of 2019, working with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians located in Siletz, Oregon. This was more general BIA Pathways internship rather than specific to our TCR branch. But I started out with stand surveys, vegetation transects and survey plots, culvert mapping, visits to the tribal health clinic, and really focusing on first foods and community gardening, as well as did some administration work in forestry there. So that's what a lot of these pictures are. Although all of us had to adapt during COVID, so the following summer I preferred to switch it up and do something a little more climate focused, although I loved my experience in Siletz, and I began with the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, and also worked with the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center and provided some support, although only a little bit, to our TCR branch. And during my time there at AT&I, of course, all climate focused and largely youth focused. I've worked on co-organizing the youth track of a National Tribal Leadership Climate Change Summit, as well as assisted with the main track of the series that incorporated a youth focus to that as well. I also got to do graphic design and co-authored the tribal chapter of the 5th Oregon Climate Assessment, or OCAR 5, and created the graphic for that report as well. Also worked with AT&I and their partner organizations, again, including the Northwest CASC and the BIA's TCR branch here, just offering any additional input, incorporating youth aspects to these agencies and the projects that they're working on, and just being that kind of liaison, for lack of a better word, between all of these groups, and assisting with that regional liaison who is based at this tribal organization as well. Next slide, please. Perfect. So for more information about the BIA Pathways program, definitely just do a quick search, or again, hopefully we'll be sharing these slides, so these links are available. But there's a lot of information online for prospective interns and current interns as well. Another program that TCR branch supports is the Native Youth Climate Adaptation and Leadership Congress, or NYCALC. We partner with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to host NYCALC at NCTC, or the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. We just had NYCALC 2022 the other month. It was an absolutely wonderful experience. The youth who participate, they come from all over the country. There were participants, or groups of participants rather, who came out from the Pacific Islands, from Alaska, and across all of the lower 48. So it's not specific to federally recognized tribes, but Indigenous communities from across the United States. Great, and I'll pass it back to Alexis.
Thanks. So for this presentation, we're going to wrap up with some case studies from the Midwest region of how our funds have been used in the past, and just give some examples of, oh, there it goes, some projects. And so case study 1, this was a continuous monitoring training project with the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians. And this was from last year, and it was a Category 1 award. And so with Category 1, this is very specific to trainings and workshops. And so a tribe or tribal organization can apply for this funding to host trainings. And with this specific case study, the Red Lake Band wanted to use this funding to provide a training to all interested tribes in the Midwest region to implement their own continuous monitoring programs for dissolved oxygen, temperature, water levels in lakes and streams. And it also included previously developed training modules. That way they can really set up a robust program. And so it included construction, deployment, and data collection and analysis procedures that were necessary to implement these programs. And in addition to the training, they were able to provide supplies and equipment to the participating tribes for their monitoring sites. And their goal was a number of 10 new tribal monitoring sites in the region. And so For this one, it's an example of both training, but also a form, I guess, of implementation for their monitoring. And so this was a really interesting project. And category 2 is from the adaptation planning side. And so this was a category 2 for Bad River Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Tribe. And just some context on this one, I believe this one was applied for after the flooding on the reservation. And so these funds were used to conduct a culvert inventory on the reservation, along with creating a accompanying adaptation plan that utilized the information collected from the inventory, as well as other approved documents and plans that the tribe had. And like I mentioned, this was really in response to those extreme flooding events. They saw a need and they were able to use these funds to help support their mitigation strategies. And they they have projected the increases in frequency of flooding events in the future. And so having this inventory was really important, and the adaptation plan to outline what they need to do next. And this was just kind of a map of the location for a general idea, but Midwest region, I'm sure you probably know. And case study number 3, this one's also from 2020, but it just shows a different project. So this one's category 7 for relocation, master tree, and protect in place planning. And the grant was awarded to the Lower Sioux in the state of Minnesota. And they wanted to use the funds to protect their access to the Minnesota River. And this was done through a flooding and erosion assessment to develop a mitigation strategy of their tribal land. And they wanted to conduct a study of that flooding and erosion to develop some recommendations for the installation of erosion protection. And they wanted to also mentor a component to provide a STEM opportunity for the community youth. And so for this project, they really had a lot of different aspects and, involving the youth to help assist some of these activities under the grant. That's kind of why I want to highlight this one specifically. And so they wanted the youth to work with their environmental department and their TIPO office and help with this environmentally engineering project. And so these are just some examples of how our funding has been used in the Midwest region specifically. And with that, we'll close out, and just want to say thank you all for joining this call. It was a lot of information, I'm sure, in probably a short amount of time, but we'll open it up now for any questions or comments. And this slide has our contact information. So thank you again.
I have a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, this is Monty Frunk with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe Tribal Emergency Management calling here. Good presentation. 2 things. Since you talked about hazard mitigation and everything else, and with your resilience office at the Midwest region, could I get that person to reach out to me? Because I would like them to review my tribal hazard mitigation plan and EOP, because we're really focusing on climate change as a big item. And I'd like to get as many eyes on it as I can, even though it's been approved by Region 5 FEMA, but it'd be nice to get your eyes also on it too. Second thing is we are working with FEMA out in DC with Lori Foley, who does the Heritage Emergency Response Training. And we are looking to bring that course to Region 5 for the 34 tribal nations here in Minnesota sometime in the future, in collaboration with the Minnesota Historical Society, and probably working with Minnewacan with their cultural center. But they would like to have a session on climate change and how it affects what we do for protecting our our documents, our museums, our cultural and artifacts, our sacred sites, and you guys just hit out of the park for a great resource that's right in our backyard to be part of that planning process that she would probably truly value in her team effort to get that set up, probably hopefully for 2023, hopefully.
Sure, I can help make that connection if you put your contact information in the chat. And I apologize, I might have not caught that second question.
Yeah. Second question was about the Mille Lacs. FEMA's looking to bring what's called the HEART or Heritage Emergency Response Training to Minnesota just for the tribal nations in Region 5, instead of going out to DC to Smithsonian like I did. And one of the things they want to put into that training, dealing with cultural archives, papers, museums, documents, is about climate change. And I think Lori Foley would really value your teamwork in her planning efforts when that course does come, because she would like to have a part of that discussing climate change in the Midwest region, and how, for those of us who are stewards of articles and museums and archives and documents and sacred sites, to work together and to prepare for responding to when those are possibly damaged by climate change.
Okay, yeah, definitely. We would love to be involved. If we, you guys really want us to. I think that request would go through our new branch chief, Crystal Keys. And she might be able to help more with the details of that, but I'm sure that would not be a problem. Especially if we can help out and even go over some of our annual awards again, and see where that can kind of align with some of the projects and the needs. But yeah, I think just a quick email to Crystal Keys and just kind of explaining how we can be involved and we can, work that out.
Okay, I'm having trouble trying to get into the chat, but I'll give you my email, which is pretty common. It's Monte, MONTE .Frank, FRONK, at, all one word, milleacsband.com. And that's for both those questions. Just email me after this, so for reviewing my plans, and then contact with Lori. So thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I saw one just came in the chat from Sharon. Is anyone looking at soil health as a result of climate change? And Sharon, do you mean specific to tribal proposals that we've seen, or folks at BIA Climate Branch here who are looking at those things?
No, I just haven't seen much that soil has been looked at, really kind of like Mother Earth in general, related to the health of the earth.
I've seen research from the climate adaptation science centers, although not much. It hasn't been an area of focus for me, so it's not something that I've looked out for, but I would encourage you to look at either the National CASC website or specific to your region to see what research they may have done. And I've also seen awarded proposals from our program who have had an aspect of soil health in it. And I share that because these awards have been publicly announced already. But I have seen aspects of soil health as well, though, again, not many. So hopefully that's the area of research that continues to grow.
Thank you.
And just a note on that as well, on our slide with the NCA map, if you're looking for a specific project, you might be able to look up, soil related projects on that tool. And if you're interested in specific regions, You can also utilize that filter, but that should also help with any project, especially if it's related to climate change. I believe you might be able to pull it up on that map as well.
Yes, and we can put a link for that map in the chat shortly. Are there any other questions?
And hearing none, did we want to close out early, Mary?
I think that would be fine.
Okay. So with that, not hearing any questions, we just once again just want to say thank you so much for joining our presentation. And if any questions come up after this, this is our contact information and it'll be going out with our presentation. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're usually pretty quick to respond, but just wanted, keep that communication line open. And once again, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
And we do have a question. It says, can we be emailed the slides? And yes, we can. If Coral or Alexis wants to send me their slide presentation, I can definitely do that.
Okay, yeah,
After-
I can send that to you today.
Okay, after you've done it, put it in PDF.
Yes.
All right. Okay, I'm going to end the stop recording here.